I don't think just simply omitting this is sufficient enough. I think it needs to go back for AWB to provide some input. AWB has certainly provided input on ordinances before. My understanding from the AWB members that contacted me were that they don't feel like they have access anymore to help guide the decisions or have discussions, or Casey nor Chris Showor, nobody contacted anybody on the Animal Welfare Board to discuss how they felt about this. Or instead of just omitting it, should it be rewritten to include after 72 hours if the animal is microchipped, registered in any city or registered just in our city. I just feel like there's more work that needs to be done than to just simply omit it, because as we've identified and agreed upon, if we do simply just omit this, it does give future administration the ability to euthanize after on that 73rd hour.
And on the flip side of that, just like I mentioned before, then we're going to have to reinvent the wheel and rewrite the SOPs, the guidelines, everything, because we've only got 2 isolation facilities, okay? And
but we've had that shelter for over a year and we've been just fine.
Because we have not been
keeping place for 5 years.
We have not been keeping them for the 6 days.
We have not been following our own policy.
And this ordinance has not been updated since 1999. So this was in, as I'm looking at the code of ordinances.
I've been doing it for 5 years, and I know it hadn't been within 5 years.
I'm looking at the code of ordinances right now, and it was in the 1999 code. If it had been updated, it would it not reference? Yeah, it should reference it.
Okay.
When I talked to Councilman Dupree, I told him table this and bring it back before. What actually took place was when KC went through all the ordinances, and the 96 to the 72 was not included. And so I asked her when she came to me and asked me to make that change this month, I said, Casey, can you please go through the ordinances? Let's do everything right now so that we don't have an animal control ordinance each month, every month. So that is how this all transpired. She read this in the ordinance, and she said that this was not something that was practiced. She was not aware of this, so then we called Jeffrey. Jeffrey said the same thing, and so that is why this particular thing was omitted, just trying to clean up the ordinances and get everything in line with the SOP and what is followed.
Well, I don't think, based on the feedback I'm receiving, other than not knowing about it and having a chance to discuss it, I don't think anybody's of the opinion that somebody's out to start euthanizing dogs after 72 hours. I don't think that's the issue. I think the fail-safe is the 6 days. And, you know, there's been animals in there that have been there longer than 6 days that have been adopted out and made wonderful pets. I'm sure you can attest to Max on that. And, you know, how you sort that out, how you decide, you know, going forward, I think the comfort zone is let us discuss it, let us have some input, and, you know, the 6 days makes everybody feel better, knowing you probably would euthanize it until after 6, 8, whenever, anyway. But leaving it in there, I guess, is kind of the fail-safe that makes people, you know, you hear there's horror stories about somebody being on vacation and, you know, couldn't get contact when they come back, your dog has been adopted or it's been euthanized. I guess it's that period in between 72 hours and another 72 hours that provides a comfort zone. And my question is, are we overcrowded? I haven't seen that.
No, not now, no.
But the options are up, and there's a multitude of activities designed to, you know, enhance adoptions. I'm just wondering, is it just changing the ordinance because we don't want to do it monthly, or it's time to change it, or is there a need for it?
Just like I said before, the way our SOPs are wrote, when you get a dog that comes in off the street, he stays in isolation for 72 hours. We've got 2 isolation bays, okay? You're keeping a dog for 6 days. He cannot go out on the main floor until that 7th day, okay? So that means you're going to have multiple dogs in 2 ISO cages, unless you break the SOPs, and you're going to move them out on the floor that aren't adoptable. And at that point, what that creates, you're moving diseased dogs out onto the main adoption floor.
So,
You can figure out how to make that work, we'll roll with it.
so let's be clear, we're already breaking the policy. We're already breaking the
We have
ordinance.
not done that 6 days since I started here. When John and when I was working for
So-
Mike Millie, it has not been done.
So the way Item H reads, it does not say 72 hours in isolation. It says the owner not reclaimed by the owner, may be humanely euthanized after being impounded, not isolated, for 72 hours. Maybe we should rewrite it to say they're impounded for 72 hours, isolated for 72 hours, then they can go back to Gen Pop on the 73rd hour, then they can be put with the others. Nobody wants to, we're not currently adding disease, we're not advocating that we keep an animal in isolation for 6 days. That's too expensive and that's too costly, and you're right, we can't, clearly we can't do that because we haven't been doing that. I just think this Item H does not clarify isolation, it clarifies impounded.
Well, I mean, if you want to do everything that's in our SOPs, you're gonna have to add another 50 ordinances, you know. I think that's an operating policy, correct or not, Lance? I mean, electing to keep a dog in isolation for 72 hours to keep spreading diseases. I just think you're gonna add more ordinances if you want to pull everything out of our SOPs and our operating.
Well, we're talking about an ordinance, and here we're talking about 72 hours versus 6 days. That's my issue. I don't want this town to have the ability to euthanize after 72 hours.
We do not euthanize here,
But
unless
we
it's a
don't
vicious or sick
have
dog.
that in our ordinance.
Yeah, I guess we'll probably.
If that's the case, let's put it in our ordinance.
Probably what we need to
That's
do
fine.
is make it clear, under what circumstances we euthanize, if at all.
And it's in our SOPs.
Right.
That standard, that guideline is in our SOPs.
Well, and I'm just thinking that perhaps there needs to be, we just need to table this for tonight and let the Animal Welfare Board deal with this, and get their thoughts on it, and bring it back next month. If there can be, I mean, we can go back and forth here all night, and probably not gonna get anywhere. I would just suggest that, that we table it. That's my suggestion. I don't have to, council doesn't have to agree with that, that's.
Oh, as far as the rest, all of the ordinance, I don't think anybody disagrees with the rabies issue. I think that's state law, and that needs to be changed to be in compliance. Is that correct, Jeffrey?
You can make it as strict as you want it. You can add 350 days on there if you like. You just can't go less than the state. So you can keep it at 90.
But what I'm getting at is that if
We're gonna have to table the whole ordinance, correct?
yeah, the whole ordinance, I'm saying just table agenda item D4, so that animal welfare can take a look at that, take a look at the SOPs, and then bring it back when they can reconcile those two.
And AWB did participate in writing the SOP, so they should be aware of what the SOP state.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I think everybody's working in the same direction. I just think we're not ready to move forward with this right now as presented.
Yeah, we can table this perhaps after we get done with the next agenda item with the seat clearer.
Can somebody can make that motion if they desire to table it?
Okay, I'll just make the motion that we table item D4 for a later meeting. Do I need a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Councilman Dupree, all of those in favor? Aye. Item D5, consider an act on membership of the Hickory Creek Animal Welfare Board to include non-residents of Hickory Creek.
Yeah, this has been brought up before the council before, and it failed. And the issue we're facing now is that, as I said earlier, activities have increased, adoptions have increased. The shelter's getting invited to things like the expo. We have 3 additional pet adoption projects set up. Adoptions are greater according to the numbers than they have been in some time. There's been a lot of movement, but it takes a lot of people to get this work done. And currently, or recently, we had 1 chair and 3 board members. 2 of the board members are moving out of Hickory Creek. I called John about one of them who is moving to Lake Dallas and said, can they finish out their term? He said, let's go with that one now until we have discussion, because they're going to be in Lake Dallas. The other one we're not sure about, and it's creating quite a bottleneck for us. And volunteers, in fact, most of them are from the Corinth area, and they've expressed interest in helping in any way they can. They show up in a timely fashion, they do this, and anything they can. So I think consideration was put out in terms of, since they're already doing it, you know, let's open this up to include. And knowing that's already not flown once before, I'm just, you know, bringing it up again because things are happening, a lot of movement, a lot of progress, a lot of upward mobility in terms of adoptions and events. We don't have the help. We're trying the best we can. We're 501c3, and that's, everything's under that. And that's why we're hustling to make sure we generate funds and keep this thing moving. It's hard to do without people. And it's like making a decision with the ordinances. You know, we're going to have maybe 2 people. So it was asked me to present that, and the idea that, you know, consider they're willing to do away with the name, the board name, because they're not a sanctioned board anyway. It can be called Friends of the Animals was one of the suggestions, but they're asking, you know, for consideration on this.
Okay, council discussion?
I guess a few comments here. Speaking with a few of the current members, it appears that the main objective of AWB today is different from what it was a few years ago, that it's a board that is constantly changing. The objectives are constantly changing, not like planning and zoning, not like the other boards. The objective a few years ago was, let's help build a shelter, let's help policy, let's help get things up to code, let's do what we can to do right by the animals and have a good shelter. Today, my understanding of what I'm being told from the few current members that are there, it's turned more into fundraising and events. Last year, AWB put $9,200 towards the 501c3 budget, and that money is used to help sick animals, animals that require medication that the town wouldn't necessarily take care of, to help adopt animals by eliminating adoption fees. There's different things that those funds are used for as AWB sees fit and is approved by the separate 501c3 organization. So now that we have a good shelter and we've got good policies, they're doing events all over town in garage sales, and the way that it was put to me by the chairman is, we need young blood, we need energy. We have people that want to talk policy and come to a meeting once a month. We don't have doers, and this board is allowed to have up to 9 members. At one point, they did have 9 members, and attrition happens. Loss of interest, just normal change of command. With this change of command, it's going to leave a chair and a lady who is not a doer. She is a policy person, and it's going to be very difficult for AWB to be successful in the future without some sort of assistance getting members. Now, I don't know if just going outside of Hickory, I don't understand why we don't have that help here. But if there are people identified in Corinth, in Highland Village, in Lake Dallas that are willing to volunteer and willing to help, while I don't agree they should chair a committee, but if they want to be on the committee so that they can help volunteer and make flyers and show up at events and help microchip and help fundraise, I'm all for it. I don't think they should be allowed to chair a committee, and I will point out a case in point. There's 2 sitting members on Parks and Rec who have both moved to Arizona. One of them is working on our parks map today. They are still active participants from afar. My opinion is if they're willing to fulfill their current term even though they don't live here now because of a business change, a marital change, or whatever have it, if they're willing to still volunteer for the town in a non-leadership capacity, in a worker bee capacity, I don't have a problem with it, especially with this board, which is, like you said, a non-sanctioned board. My opinion. Do you know if there are people identified already that are being held back just because of their geographic location?
The last I heard was 2, but that's been a while back. I don't know if that still exists. And I agree with you on the chair part. That was one of the things they discussed. The chair would have to remain a Hickory Creek resident because they need that connection. Everything being over under 501c3. And some of the board members that have left in the past openly say, we've accomplished our mission. We built a shelter. And now the mission is continuing with fundraising. And it's a whole different ballgame. There are people who want to do policy. There are some people willing to do fundraising, but we're in a fundraising mode right now. And we're finding it difficult. We're asking a great deal of, people to get things done. Public Works has been, gone out of their way a lot to provide us help and get some of the things we need done. We applaud them for that, but we've got to have some energy, some manpower. And thank you for what you said.
I guess my hesitation would be that, for example, looking at the last, to me, there's a difference between having volunteers that help with fundraising and volunteers that are setting policy for our town, or recommending policy. They don't set policy, but I guess that's I see the potential where you could have a chairman that lives in Hickory Creek and everybody else on the board is from somewhere else. So when we have policy issues like the prior agenda item, what do we do with that? Do we say, is it,
Well,
I guess they're just recommending.
hopefully you always have a liaison as well as a chairperson. But I understand what you're saying.
Would it be appropriate to keep the animal welfare board, but then form, as you said, a friends of, like the library has Friends of the Library? And could you have a separate group that works with, have your AWB, they would look at if there's policy stuff, that your chairman and whoever could serve on that in Hickory Creek, but then if others want to participate, by all means, if somebody wants to volunteer, could you not establish just a loosely formed group called Friends of the Animals?
So they have a loosely group of volunteers now. North Texas students, teenagers that are up there washing dogs and cleaning kennels fairly regularly. I think what Lisa's looking for are people to come to the meetings and help them brainstorm on fundraising, help them go out and ask for sponsors and donations for silent auctions, and just doers. It might be a different crowd from a transient group of volunteers that are sophomore, freshmen this year at North Texas that want to come and volunteer. I think what AWB is looking for are some of the experts in the community, like one of the ladies that lives in Corinth and works for Corinth Vet. She's an expert in her field who's expressed an interest in the board, but it's never been taken seriously because she doesn't live here. However, she would be somebody that I feel would be even more qualified to help set policy than our current board members. I think if it were a targeted person that was an expert in the field that could bring great benefit to the group, and they live 10 miles away, I think that's more beneficial than just taking a neighbor who we've twisted his arm because we need a warm body.
And marketing is another area that a person who does marketing has expressed some interest, which should be, we're not marketers. We do the best we can, but that's not our forte.
What if there were non-voting members, that they could come to the meetings but not be known?
Maybe that's the, yeah.
So we would have to have a quorum of citizens, Hickory Creek citizens that could vote. It's getting sticky again.
You could, if it's a non-member board, you could say, you know, a maximum of 2 or a maximum of 3 can be non-residents, then you never have a majority of.
How much you could, if you only had 2 people, if you can't get a 9-member board together, if you only got a 4-member board, if you've got 2 Hickory Creek residents, and then you have 2 people from,
Yeah, obviously, if there's ever a situation where you're going to 4, that'd be an
well,
issue.
because they're down to,
We're down to a chair and 2 right now, and 1 is moving.
So without it getting too complicated, Lance, can they have a situation where they have 5 people, 2 of them are residents? If it has something to do with ordinances, those are the ones that vote on it because they're residents only, and then the other issues you all discuss and vote on?
You could have some, all as complicated as you want, your voting rights to be, you know, certain instances, some folks get voted. If they're non-voting members or ex officio members, then that typically doesn't count towards the quorum. That's usually just something separate and apart from the regular members.
And really from our previous D4 item though, I mean, if we have this ordinance taken care of next month, I mean, she went through all of them, you said, so there's not gonna be too much ordinance change in the first place after next month, hopefully. So it's gonna be pretty much set, and then the SOPs will be pretty much set. So I don't think we're pushing too far on as far as town policy, procedures, and voting interests, but I understand what you guys are saying. I understand it's for the animals, and you know, I kind of think if someone's going to volunteer for the animals, I think they have their best interest in the animals, and that's probably important. I hate to turn people away from that situation.
Yeah, for instance, the Corinth people say, we don't have a shelter in Corinth. And we had a choice between Denton and Lake Dallas and Hickory Creek. We came here because they're very impressed with the shelter, they're very impressed with the operation and some of the insight and some of the vision. But all they can do is show up and do their little bit, you know, a few hours a week.
So Lance, with these changes, would we actually need to finally sanction this board? It's not a sanctioned board within our ordinances. Is this something we would need to do with all these changes?
Oh, yeah, if that's the case, then where did the non-member board, who
That-
adopted that?
That's not been adopted. I mean, I think that was just a statement that there would be 9 members because the Animal Welfare Board is not sanctioned within the ordinances.
That was
a
brought
resolution
before council. It was brought before council.
Right, but there's not any ordinances that have sanctioned
It's
it.
not in an ordinance, absolutely.
Is it in resolution? Wasn't there a resolution?
I could not find any.
I mean, a resolution.
If it did come before council and it was discussed, that there would not have been a vote on it because it's not dictated by a resolution or an ordinance that I could find.
So then really, it's not even appropriate to be asking council now to approve non-residents. They could do it anyway now if they wanted to, if that's the case.
How do we deal with
Yeah,
this?
if we don't
No
have,
control over it.
if there's never been a resolution or ordinance, I was, sounded
No.
like there was a resolution.
Yeah, we've discussed this. I said, we have discussed this, how to handle this situation since it never was a sanctioned board.
Well, that needs to be sanctioned and members set forth and if there are residency requirements like those.
so I'm not quite sure what to do at this point.
There was never a resolution, but I found that there was a motion made several years ago, probably in '05, to form a committee or a board, but that's as far as it
So
went.
the committee was formed with
Right. 5 members.
5 members.
Mhm.
And where did the 9 members come from?
That's a mystery.
It was an agenda item that I added, because we had 4 additional, it was when we were ramping up for some big events, and we had more volunteers that wanted to work, and so I think it was 4, we allowed up to 4 alternates or something.
I haven't been able to locate it, but I mean, I have
I'll
been.
go back to my records.
Yeah, if you could go back and help, because I have not been able to locate it.
Okay.
As far as any policy changes, that would, you know, I understand what Lynn is saying, and that would have to come through the chair, and that's a recommendation. It's up to the council. So, you know, spite of what they may want to do, it's up to the council what they end up doing.
So is this another table item?
Do we need to table this next to we
Yeah,
figure
we
out?
can, if you want to make a recommendation, bring forth a proposed, without being overly complicated, just a simple resolution specifying the members of folks who want, what those requirements are.
And then they would be subject to Texas Open Meetings Act.
Well, they follow it now as well.
They follow it, but they're not required to. That
Well,
would change too.
They, they technically, if they're only a recommended body, they wouldn't technically have to follow that, but I think we've got a policy of all our boards generally follow that, don't they? So I'd probably recommend they do the same.
I think the problem may be, Lance, that they're, even if we say a 5-member board or whatever, it's difficult to get a quorum with people moving away. So you were saying your quorum had to be formed by Hickory Creek residents.
No, it'd be formed by, typically it's formed by voting members. So I was saying, if you were thinking about putting non-residents on, but having them as ex officio members and non-voting, typically that doesn't count towards a quorum. Though you could write in an exception that even ex officio members count as a quorum. You want to do that.
Well, council, do you want to table this and go back and look and see what we've done in the past? If there is action that we've taken, let's.
I'm willing to table it, I just want everybody to understand, we're trying the best we can to generate money for our animals and keep the shelter going. Not only monies, we're generating a lot of dog food, and we've got this Kroger program going on that's gonna generate some funds for the shelter. It's all completely changed, Chris is right, from what the original mission was. And with that kind of activity, you need hands.
Sure.
And as far as policy, I understand, what's being said. You don't want to make a policy that's going to throw a wrench into anything, but they only recommend to begin with.
Right.
And that would have to be proposed, in my mind, by the chair through discussion with the membership.
My opinion is that AWB in its existence has always kind of been either a road board or a control board, depending on who the liaison was and the direction of current topics. I think it needs to be up to this council to whether we continue AWB down the same road or we make it an official board. Maybe this needs to be a council agenda item, not so much an AWB item or I don't know. Do we want to change the way that they operate? Do we want them to be an official board, or do we want them to? I think they're quite useful at times. I don't think they're always used to the full extent that they could be used, and sometimes I think they overextend. It's all three. But maybe that's council's fault because we don't have clear definitions of what this board is to do, other than that's a recommending board. Sounds great. So I'm going to recommend the moon and see what I get. Is that fair? Maybe we or the town needs to take that on as a, and I don't know if it's something we can do this year, we want to take on as a goal or what, but we should probably make that decision as to whether if we want to continue with volunteer, non-sanctioned, or official sanctioned board, and then set some guidelines moving forward.
Well, I guess thinking about that, if we've pretty much set policy, and if we've pretty much set, we've got the SOP, all of this is going to be worked out. I guess I would keep them as they are. If their mission has really changed to fundraising, that sort of thing, then I don't see that there will be a whole lot of policy making.
Agreed.
Well, it sounds like you're getting down to the wire in terms of the number of policy change or ordinance changes that need to be made.
Shouldn't be the last time, shouldn't be any more until, we either grow a population, have to make some changes to accommodate growth. But, to speak on this, the city of Denton right now, I don't know if y'all are aware, is getting ready to build a $3.6 million shelter. okay? They have got it's called, something similar to the Friends of Hickory Creek, it's like Friends of Den Animal Shelter, okay? They are strictly a fundraiser, go to events, promote adoptions, come up there and exercise the dogs, that sort of thing. They have no dealings in the day-to-day operations as far as the shelter goes. That all bounces back to the Denton City Council to make the changes to the policy. The director or the animal services recommends it to the council, and then they make the ultimate decision one way or another. And the Friends of Denton County Animal Shelter, they have raised like $750,000 to put towards